Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Scotch and Watch. It's another Friday. Um, it's been a busy week. Uh, how about you, mate? Are you looking as tired as me?
I am indeed. Yeah, I had a good week. I launched a sports business this week,
Oh, I
which is quite
did. I
fun.
saw this.
Yeah, a bit of fun.
Oh, I
Um,
want to hear. I want to hear all about it. Just before we do, we should do the quick intro, right? So this is Scotch and Watch. Okay, this is where we talk about the collision of big media and big tech. Okay. And we have some AI and we have some real life stories thrown in from our about 250 years of combined experience, Chris and I. You can hear Chris is pouring himself what I suspect. So, is it what are you on today? Is it coffee?
large black coffee as ever.
Large black coffee. There you go. But I live in the future in Australia, so it's already whiskey o'clock. That's why it's called Scotch and Watch, because I get to drink scotch and Chris has to watch. And that's what we talk about. Now, Chris, tell me about this new business you launched this week. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, so I launched a business. There's a guy called Karen O'Connor who used to run the Week,
Mhm.
who's built a sort of subscriptions business. And I went to see him and said, "Look, I think a lot of the stuff we've done in media, you can export it and take it to sport. And sports a kind of growing business. It's AI proof. It's something that I think they can. In some ways, we've been massively disrupted for 20 years, and we've learned a lot from it. You can now take that to an industry that is
Yeah.
probably heading towards it. So
Yeah.
yeah, we launched Atlas Sports this week.
Congratulations, mate.
Thank you
It's
very much.
funny. I got offered two jobs this week, and do you know what? They came to me with the exact same message. The weird thing is that being in journalism and the troubles that journalism have had has become a qualification if you're a leader.
Yeah, yeah,
So what they basically say is, "Oh, you've been the canary in the coal mine, and all the disruption that you guys have faced for the last 20 years is now coming to us in our industry, in our industry, in our industry." And so, isn't it ironic? We might all end up as journalists suddenly getting rehired because the last 20 years has been so shitty.
yeah. Exactly the same on the business side. That there's an old McKinsey graph which basically says if you think about disruption, what percentage of your business model has been disrupted and how fast? And media is like, it's one of those graphs they have to adjust it because media is so far off the chart.
They need a decent sub. That's what
Yeah,
they need, a decent
exactly.
sub to fit it
Yeah.
in. All right. Okay. So look, here's what we're going to talk about today, because this is a truly disruptive conversation. And is something that I've been really passionate about now for the best part of 2.5 years. Okay. And it was called air gap. So some of you that are going to jump on here today, I'm sure you remember air gap. The logic that I came up with 2.5 years ago was, I'll try and précis this. There's an awful lot of anger in the publishing industry about the fact that when we put our content on the open web, it gets found by bots. Okay, it gets crawled, it gets taken, and it gets used for AI training. And 2.5 years ago, and it hasn't changed that much now, this just makes publishers absolutely insane with anger. But they don't really feel that they have any riposte. They can bring a court case, but that's going to take forever. They're going to have to face a bank of 1 million lawyers, paid $1 million each. So it's going to make things really difficult for them to win. They kind of feel that there's no way out. And my argument to them was, look, you can be as indignant as you want, but it's not a good business model. What you actually need to do is go upstream of the problem, right?
Mm.
And so there are some things that are true, fundamentally true. People want to write content. That's why you're a journalist. People want to read content. We know that's true. Okay. What's happened is that the market for discovery, distribution, and monetization has been taken away by monopolies. So the paper boys, if you like, have become the
Mhm.
trillionaires, right? That's what's happened to us. And it gets even worse with AI. But my argument to the publishers, and it really upset them to start with before they started to understand what I was trying to say was, is that if you think that your content is so supremely valuable, why do you take it and put it on the open web with no protections? And I tried to explain to them, and this kind of got through. I said it's a bit like taking your life savings and putting it in a box and leaving it on the street and then going home and coming back in the morning and being upset that the money's gone, right? That is a obvious consequence of putting your money in the street. Now, because people have figured this out, best part of 900 years ago, I believe, it was the Medicis, okay, we opened banks, which was an astonishing idea. Why don't we take the valuable thing and lock it away where other people can't take it, right? And that was what AirGap was for news. The logic was, let's take the most valuable of our content, okay, let's put it in a locked box, And then let's do the smart stuff that the AI companies do. Let's make it AI ready. Let's make it AI discoverable. Let's make it, let's put it into pools of content around high value niches like travel and lifestyle and personal finance and markets, right? And let's make it valuable, but let's take it out of the open web and put it in the box. Let's take it off the street and put it in the bank. And then you've created scarcity around something really valuable, at which point you have leverage to do a negotiation with an AI company to license that content. So that was originally the idea, a locked box that contained premium publisher content where publishers could sell it or auction it to AIs for training or perhaps for search, for RAG search. And they could add license fees and pay to crawl fees and other training fees on that. And so that was the logic. And so I presented this to the board of Microsoft. I got right to the very board of Microsoft globally and presented this concept. Half of the board thought it was a fascinating idea and they really liked it. That's with the people on the Bing side of the business in search. And on the biz dev side of it, they just said, no, we'll just take it, thanks. So that was the market we were in, still the market we're in a bit today, right? But two interesting things have happened in the last 4 or 5 months. So 5 months ago, Cloudflare popped up. Cloudflare is a cybersecurity company. It kind of has a whole series of gates in the internet to stop bad bots stealing stuff or launching cyber attacks or launching hacks. So it has the ability to put these gates in place, which means it's perfectly placed to require payments for crawlers trying to steal your content on the open web. So they've gone public with their pay per crawl model. Okay. And I actually had a conversation with them this morning, which I'll be putting on the newsletter shortly. But this was this was a revolution for me. This was fantastic news. Finally, we had somebody that was saying, let's create a marketplace for premium content and premium AI to trade in real time. Okay. And then everybody can be a winner. And this supply and demand curve that we need to make work can happen again. And then this week, just a couple of days ago, Microsoft, Kel Surprise, comes out with almost exactly the same plan. And so that is, look, I'm not terribly chuffed that they haven't paid me $50 million to go do it for them, but I'm sure, look, hang on.
Give it time.
Oh, no,
Give it time.
I thought that was them on the phone just then, but it wasn't. I'm sure it will be, though. I'm sure they're coming on any minute. But this means, or it gives me the impression that there is a market opening for the trading of premium content, for the growth of trusted, grounded, reliable mass adoption AI. Now, I might be. This is where every week this is where I go awesome, and Chris goes yeah, but in reality. So this is your chance, man. Go first up, Balloon.
No, I think it's good. I think that it tells you a lot about sort of where we are at the moment. In that, so 2.5 years ago, we would all have been kind of, when we were thinking about AI licensing and all the rest of it, we were all pretty much thinking about LLMs. We were all thinking about taking our data for training purposes, and what would the market be for that? How would that work? In that 2.5 years, I think it's become clearer that there are really two markets. There's one which is taking data for training, and the second one is live search, which is basically for AIs to be credible and up to date and current. You're going to take something, you're going to build a model that takes you like a year to build and costs, $1 billion. The minute that you deploy it, it's out of date because it was trained on data that's a year old. So there now needs to be a secondary kind of set of crawling. And the reason that Cloudflare kind of got involved in that is as you said, Cloudflare is like they're sort of it's unseen service, aren't they, in the web? So the Cloudflares and the Akamais, they're sort of, I think they're called CDNs, and they sit and they basically, if you work behind the scenes in any big publisher, you know that they're the guys that when the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans, and if you ever work for a national newspaper, if you publish a story on Vladimir Putin, it's the CDN that for the next hour and a half basically keeps your services actually running. So these guys have incredible insight into the kind of the bit of the web that nobody really sees, which is just that sort of traffic part.
Yeah.
So the reason they've got involved is because the searches, the volume of searches from AI bots is increasing exponentially as more and more people use services that require this live search functionality. I talked to our friend who was on the show a few weeks back, Chris Dicker, the other day. Said they suddenly had 1.6 million visits from AI bots in a single day, right? And so
I
this
remember
is
we had him on the pod.
yeah. So suddenly you see that there's this sort of this is a different market because this is about there's a consumer at the end of that who's asked a question that requires a search to take place. And an AI bot to go and find information that it can then bring back. So this is a product level, real time kind of. You can see that there's a sort of a chain of, that leads back ultimately to a consumer and to a product. So that for me is why this is suddenly an interesting market. And if you've got the people who are like right at the top who can intercept traffic, the one thing that Cloudflare have that publishers have really struggled with is they have the ability to say, "You, Mr. Bot, you're not coming in."
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and so that suddenly is something that gives them a kind of leverage point to be able to do that. Microsoft is really interesting because as we both know, they don't build experimental kind of beta type. They're not a scrappy kind of, hey, look, they are enterprise level. It's like the sort of the US infantry turning up when Microsoft when Microsoft decides they're going to do something.
It's that carrier fleet, isn't it, with the carrier and the 12 warships?
Yeah.
Oh no, Microsoft's coming. Yeah.
So for them to be doing it, I think we should talk a little bit about that because again, go back 2 years ago, most of the tech response to the kind of publishers saying what the fuck basically was, silence and or see in court and or kind of look, outdated laws and all the kind of standard kind of responses. I think for Microsoft to be taking this seriously also tells you that the reading of the copyright direction of travel is that there will be more protection for publishers and content than there is at the moment. Otherwise, I don't think they would be, going into this in the way that they are.
That's interesting. I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't think that's the reason at all. I think that they've had what I love about engineers, and one of the best engineers I know is actually sitting on this call. I can see him in the list. Okay, is that engineers are absolutely brilliant at being engineers. Okay, they are tunnel vision, 100% focused, which is what makes them so brilliant. And so I just want to, I'm going to go back to that meeting I had with the Microsoft board. I'm putting it out in public. Let's have a chat about this because I'm waiting for your phone call. All right. So one of the guys said to me on that call, he said, "Ricky, we don't need publisher content." And I said, "Yes, you do." I said, "You're going to need it for search." And they said, "We already know what the future is going to be." I said, "Do you really? What's the biggest story in the world next Thursday? Please tell me. Can you tell me what's going to happen in the stock market next month? I'd love to know." Hey,
who wins the 348 tree?
Yeah. It's like Back to the Future. Do you remember Marty McFly? That book? Yeah. No, that's not. It wasn't Marty McFly. It was the other guy. Anyway, it's the bad guy. But here's the thing: you don't know the bloody future, and that was hubris writ large, and it was just so infuriating because I'm trying to have a coherent, sensible conversation about something that's strategically important for them as well as for the publishing industry. And the response was, "We've got this, but you haven't." And I think that's why they've come back. I think that they've done the maths and they've figured out that the common crawl has achieved something. And then the other crawls that they've done has achieved something. But now the web is being filled with more and more and more and more junk. And they've kind of been once bitten, twice shy. The whole Reddit disaster with Gemini or what was it called before Gemini? I can't remember now. Do you remember?
Oh,
the one they lied about, that one.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, the rubbish one. Yeah. And so they've figured out, right? And this is where I'm talking about the engineers. The engineers figure that if you build perfect code, okay, which is what they care about, you will get a perfect outcome. But it doesn't account for the fact that perfect code has to feed on something here. And if they've got nothing new to feed on, it stops learning. It's a bit like a kid that loses its teacher in the second week of term. It's not going to pass the exam at the end of term. And what I've always said about this is that you need the content that an AI returns to you to be true, and especially if you're doing RAG, if you're doing a search on something, okay, that really matters to you, and you get back a hallucination, that's a huge, huge problem. All right.
Yeah.
And so if you want mass adoption of AI, people have to trust it's giving them value for their time.
Yeah.
And if you've got hallucinations, those excuses of it's new, we're figuring it out, come back to us next Thursday, it'll be fine. Oh, by the way, at the same time, can you just quickly pay me like $20 a month that we wanted for it as well over here? People have patience, and I think their patience is ending. And I think the AI engineers have just figured out, oh shit, we actually do need to have real-time data here.
Bard, it was called.
Boom, sure it was.
So let's agree that there's at least a couple of forces that say so. The copyright thing will be one thing. The sort of degradation of the information is another. The third one will be that if you want to also, yes, you want a good answer, but particularly if you want to then attach an agent who's going to take an action off the back of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So the sort of the bar is being raised for the quality of information.
Mm-hmm.
You've got however many court cases still running, around kind of particularly rag scraping and all the rest of it. So
can I retell my funny joke on that just really quickly? When someone said to me the other day, "Have you thought about taking a job at Google?" I said, "The only job I'm taking at Google is in the legal department." Okay, it made me.
That's a sitcom waiting to happen. You turning up in the you turning up with the Google lawyers.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think it's just. I think the fact that there is a kind of this feels now like it's a problem that needs solving, whereas a couple of years ago, it felt like a problem that we were raising. Publishers were generally raising, but nobody really felt that it was going to need solving. So that's that can only be a good thing, and I quite like the fact there's sort of two separate places that it's being looked at. I mean, I assume the Microsoft kind of I don't know anything about it. I've not managed to get anybody to
nor does anybody else. It's top secret. So I'm pretty sure that the slide deck I'm looking at on the screen just here behind me is exactly the same as the one they're working on. But anyway, let's see. We'll wait and see.
Air Gap 365.
What a good idea! That was my mistake. I just missed off the numbers.
Yeah, but in that case, so the other thing with that is if you think about marketplace, when I spend sort of a bit of time looking at the kind of copyright legal kind of structures, one of the biggest questions in there is there a market that actually exists for commercial licensing? So if people are coming and stealing the content, are they sort of avoiding a market that exists, or is that market doesn't exist and therefore you can't claim that you've been denied the fruits of a market that doesn't exist, basically? So this very much suggests there is a market, right? The world believes there's going to be a market, doesn't it?
And that's going to have a whole series of downstream implications.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
The second thing is, in a market, you have two sides that come to it. You've got the buyer and you've got the seller, but you also have the price, and that is it may be the case that in the end, publishers sort of struggle with this opt-in, opt-out, getting that away over the line. So there's a really clear opt-in, opt-out. The second best thing you can get for that is the ability to set the price. Which is basically, I've compromised my principles. Now we're talking about the money. So if you want to come and scrape my content, and I'm in a controlled marketplace situation, I can make that available for $1. I can make it available for $1,000. And if I make it available for $1,000, no one buys it. And that is a price-driven equivalent of me opting out of being sort of in that particular product.
Great point.
Right.
Great point.
So those things, both of those to me are hugely kind of positive outcomes.
Yeah, I can put a bit of gloss on that. So when I came up with the air gap idea, the logic was that publishers would be able to come in and they could set their own price on a pay-per-crawl basis. All right. And they said to me, but how am I supposed to know what that number is? And I said, well, you should make it whatever it was you earned in advertising in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, your content had a value to a certain number of people in 2020. I don't think the quality of journalism has diminished in value since 2020. What's changed is that the price of digital advertising has been diminished by people with unlimited scale. But that
Mm.
doesn't change your cost base or your ability to cover the news. So it should be whatever you charged in advertising in 2020 plus whatever cost of growth has been, CPI has been since. That
Yeah.
should be the number. So you just work out how many searches you get, and then you divide that by your revenue number, and that's the cost per crawl. And you start there.
Mm.
And you know what? In a year's time, when you figure out that this is working for you, and you renegotiate your deal, you can reset your price in a year. Once a year, you can reset your price in the same way as somebody redoing their deal with HBO would do the same thing. And so I just think that, that gives incredible flexibility. But what I did to check whether that was okay was I went to the World Trade Organization in Europe. Okay.
Mm.
And I said to them, hey, if I did something like this and I created a marketplace, okay, how would I ensure that I'm not creating a cartel that
Mm.
would fall foul of, global market situation? And do you know what they said? Oh, this won't be verbatim because I can't do the accent. But what they basically said was this. They said, look, it's the opposite. If you create a commercial market for something, okay, that's currently free, freely available on the open web, and you create a commercial market for it, okay, the ability of people to go and take it changes because they could take it if you'd given it away for free. That was your stupid fault, right? Who
Yeah.
are you angry with here, right?
Yeah.
But if you put it behind a paywall or put it behind some kind of blockage and said there's a price attached to it and gone public with what that price is, then what you've done is you've created a theft problem, a fraud problem in taking it. It
Yeah.
falls under the aegis of the World Trade Organization. So if there's a marketplace that's being bypassed, that's a crime.
Mm.
If you've got a marketplace that doesn't exist and you've just put it on the
Yeah.
open web, you're just stupid, right? And so what are you going to do? And so to your point, and I hadn't really thought about it from this angle, but what you're saying is that if the tech companies are now setting up trading platforms, they are accepting that there's a value to this content. And they
100%.
can never argue again that the content's fair use.
Yeah, because what they can't do in that is they can't set the price for the
That's
sellers.
massive.
Yeah. Yeah. So the acceptance that you're going to build, that's why I said there's no, however many engineers you have, you deploy them on things that you think you're going to have to do, right? So the fact that Microsoft are choosing to put a team to put something together for this, to me says, okay, we're getting to the point of acceptance that there probably has to be a solution. We would rather it was for the AI companies and for the internet in general. Everybody would rather it was a simple solution. It was a single place that you could go to kind of solve that problem. The AI developer side, the sort of buyer side, doesn't want to have to deal with 150 countries' interpretations of this. They don't want to have to deal with 20 different licensing regimes spread across the world. They'd rather go to one place and get it done. But it does accept that it's kind of core principle. There's going to be a seller, there's going to be a buyer, there's going to be a price, there's going to be an exchange of value, at which point that content is available to be used. But the mirror of that is if you're in a marketplace and you haven't agreed the price, then the content can't be used. That's otherwise.
So on exactly that topic, I asked that question this morning when I was chatting to Cloudflare, and I didn't entirely like their answer. I heard a lot of what I believed was very authentic support for publishers. This has to end. They're our customers. We need to listen to them. We have the opportunity and the technology and the scale and the ability to be able to create a marketplace. Yes, there's going to be good operators and bad operators on the web. Some are going to misbehave. Some are going to play fair. Our job is to stop the bad behavior. We're going to collaborate with both sides of the market. We're going to pull everybody together. It's going to be kumbaya around the fire pit. It's all good, right? I heard all that. The one thing that troubled me most from the call, though, was price. So the response was every publisher should set their own price. Now, when I had I can't remember what, I think 16,250 publishers in the working group on AirGap. And we had a meeting with their representatives. I think we had 20 of us, 25 of us or something globally that were in this working group that represented all these publishers. And we had lots of conversations about price. Like, how do we set the price? What should the price be? And as I said, I eventually linked it to what we used to earn.
Yeah.
Pre-monopoly.
Mm.
Yep. So that felt like a good place to start, and we could work forward from there. That was where we started. But what I heard today from Cloudflare was every publisher can set his or her own price. That's absolutely super duper. We got no problem with that. And I was like, okay. And I thought that was the end of the conversation. But then they carried on and just basically said, but then probably at some point there's going to be some sort of programmatic price setting that's going to be based on supply and demand and output and everything else. And what I started to hear was double click again.
Yeah.
This time for AI. What I heard was, there's an absolute glut of I don't know, Olympics content during the Olympics. Therefore, the price is going to fall. When in our world, in publisher world, the price rises.
Yeah.
Then, right? So it has a kind of inverse kind of surge pricing mentality. It surges in value for the tech companies and diminishes for us. And over time, that eventually spins the price lower. So I think that, if we're going to do one thing, we should absolutely set our own prices, yeah. But I would like to see a way that we do this in a way, and we had this in AirGap, whereby the contracts expire on 12 monthly bases. And on that time frame, you basically say, well, if you still want to have this, then the price is this. But on August 30, we're going to put it out to tender. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I kind of think that. So, firstly, from a legal perspective, I think the publishers have to set their own prices. I don't think you can turn up to go back to your cartel question. If all publishers club together and say, the price together is $1,000 today. And that's it. If you want any content about the Olympics, it's that price. The competition authorities do not like that. That is collusion of an industry to disbenefit a supplier. Blah blah blah. So probably they have to set their own price, but that also assumes that the pricing model, over time, is still an article by article, search by search pricing. Whereas you wonder that. So I slightly think about, if you think about the cable model. I know the cable model is not it's not the coming thing, right?
But it is for this.
If you think about it,
commercial model.
Yeah, if you think about that, like Fox News and ESPN set their own prices. The cable company sets the price to the consumer, and the cable company works out, is it worth me paying the additional extra that I have to pay for Fox News compared to having MSNBC? And the answer is, well, if my end users expect to find Fox News, then I kind of have to pay that. So there's haggling about price, but effectively, the Fox News charges a premium because the cable company has to have Fox News in their cable bundle, right?
100%.
So you would think over time that what would happen. So I think this model of sort of each publisher setting their pricing is a very good thing if you're the Times, you're the Times, you're the Telegraph, you're kind of the Economist or whatever.
You used to be the boss of the Times, right? Would you have done this deal?
I would be so excited that this was on the table. That you were finally able to say, okay, well, this is then an alternative market for content, and we could start to think about how you kind of balance the pricing. What do I do as a subscription bundle versus what do I do as a kind of a content marketplace, and how do I balance the sort of the finances off of those two things? I would think this was only a good thing.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
Now, the thing we talked about before, when we talked about AirGap, though, was also the arbitrage. Who gets the juicy arbitrage benefit? So if we go back, and from this previous comment, I could bore you about arbitrage forever, but it basically in that market, if you think about the case that's in court at the moment, the AdX, right? AdX sits in the middle of
Are they in court?
They're in court. There's a buyer, there's a seller. I haven't been paying
any attention to that at all.
There's a buyer, there's a seller, there's an auction, all right? And in that auction, a whole chunk of this case is basically saying, well, actually, because Google has so much of an advantage in the information of what's contained in that auction, it is able to take contracts from demand and say, well, I'll fulfill that contract at this price, and then it's able to go and buy supply and say, well, I will buy supply at this price, and no one knows, but we all know there's about a 30% gap between those two prices in a lot of cases. TBC, see more for details. So that arbitrage is, I would suspect, if you're sat at Microsoft, what you're saying is, well, what we want to be is we want to be the marketplace. Now, do they want to be a pure marketplace, which is, let's call that the kind of bizarre model where I effectively own the town square and I allow sellers to turn up and buyers to turn up and I'm nothing to do with the pricing that goes between them? Or are they basically more like the kind of ADX model, which is I sit in the middle, I have asymmetric information because I have the seller's information and the buyer's information, and there's gravy in the middle and it pours into my coffers?
I think it goes even a step beyond that, to be honest with you. And this was why I went to Microsoft in the first place. So the very first post I ever wrote on my newsletter 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, was basically saying that Microsoft is the right partner for publishers for this reason. It's behind on search and it can't catch up, but we've got antitrust cases happening. It has I can't remember what the number is. I think it's got 3.5 million paying enterprise customers that deliver hundreds of billions of dollars of recurring revenue that never cancels. And it's got an AI. It owns 49% of the fastest growing, most exciting AI tech company in 25 years in OpenAI, which it bought for 13 billion, which is now worth 750 billion. Okay. All right. It now earns more than 13 billion. All right. And they're in early and they own it and they own a share of the earnings of it. And they're using the earnings from it to build their own AI capability internally. Honestly, Satya Nadella is smart.
Yeah.
Smart man. I think that might be why he's the CEO of Microsoft. Right? So what I think they're actually doing here with this marketplace is recognizing what I said to them 2.5 years, or whatever it was, 2 years ago, a year and a half. I said, the future is not going to solely be everything you know today. It's going to be everything you know incrementally every second for the next 1,000 years. That's what the value is. And you need to plug yourself into understanding that to make sure that your AI is both always right and totally reliable, because mass adoption of AI will only be achieved by the AI that's trusted.
Yeah.
And every AI that gets it wrong, techies think that that's a coding error. The public thinks it's a fatal error. Okay. Because it's just like, my kid's got croup. What do I do? And it's told me to feed him Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Right. That's a massive problem for consumers, right? And we as journalists know that because I've been sued, you've been sued. We know what the cost of getting it wrong is, not just in reputation, but also financially and everything else. Tech companies have no vision of that. I think Microsoft has figured that out. I think Microsoft has figured out that the best AI won't be the one with the best tech. It will be the one with the most adoption. And the one that will get the most adoption is the one with the biggest consumer base. They are right up there in consumer base, but it will be the one that's always right. And the way to be always right is to have the best, most trusted and grounded content. And where does that come from? 40% of the web? No, it's actually slightly less. 36% of the web is publisher output. You make friends with the publishers, you make friends with the future.
Yeah, then you can see. I mean, you can see so many interesting models. If once there is a market, so if you think about that like just any kind of trading model, take your Olympics example. Everybody's searching for more and more content about a particular. There's always an athlete that kind of breaks through. If you go back to, this is for our older viewers, you might remember Eric the Eel, who.
My goodness, that was the Sydney Olympics.
Yeah, that's a grab. I don't know why that's.
Thank you for localizing it. What about Eddie the Eagle Edwards? I remember him. He was fun.
Exactly
He was
that,
much
right?
more fun. Yeah.
Always in the Olympics, there's someone who comes out who nobody knows anything about. So if you imagine once you're building this marketplace, you've got all these kind of demand side firing off. Who is it? Who is Eric the Eel? Where's he from? Why can't he swim very well? How did he make it
Searched
to the
everyone
Olympics?
yesterday.
Yeah, bang, 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 bang. Um, what happens in that is that the kind of what logically should happen in that is the price of the Eric the Eel content rises. At that point, publishers have also built in that kind of scanning systems the same way they do for advertising, which is basically saying what in this marketplace is worth more than it was yesterday, and that sends a signal to the newsroom to say people are interested in get this content. So you end up with not just a marketplace which kind of has a sort of financial implication, but it actually creates the right incentives for kind of commissioning it potentially demand-led commissioning of content. And the development of areas. So there's so much interesting stuff that you can think through when this kind of thing's in place.
Can I jump in on that? Because this squares a whole load of circles really interesting. So I don't know if you remember, when I was managing editor of News Corp here in Australia, I quit at the top of my career and went to Microsoft. I went to MSN.
Yeah.
And I went on a maternity cover and I faked my CV to get the job because they were never going to hire me. I was enormously overqualified, but the reason I went was because I wanted to strategically learn what a tech company was trying to do by being a content company, averse to a content company trying to be in a tech company. And I wanted to see who was going to get to the winner's circle first. And and I could tell it wasn't the publishing company, right? And so was it going to be Microsoft? And so I actually built a business that did exactly what you're describing. It was called The Fix. So we broke every single day down into 15-minute compartments, okay? And then we analyzed using Microsoft's massive, massive audience and massive data and said, okay, well, between 10 and 10:15, Shuri Cruz, Tom Cruise's daughter, is the most interesting. But between 3 and 3:30, it's Sienna Miller. And between this time and this time, it's somebody else. And so we actually had reporters. There were only 5 reporters, but all they did was wrote fast turnaround stories in those time frames and then put them. It was like dropping I always used to describe it as dropping a donut in an ant's nest. The outcome is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
So you just dropped it in and everybody just went, boom.
Yeah.
Our traffic went out of control and we overtook News Corp's earnings in Australia in 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got the data and the knowledge, then all you have to do is turn that into a business model that satisfies the demand and you can win. And we've seen the tech companies win at that again and again and again and again. But I've got a question for you. I'm a journalist. You're a journalist. We don't exist solely to feed people's hunger. Sometimes we want to write things to surprise them and shock them and delight them. Hello, Alistair. Welcome.
Yep.
So our job is sometimes just to reset the agenda. In fact, our job most of the time is to reset the agenda. Our job is to break the stories that other people don't want to know. So we have to balance reporting, which is what I've just described, and journalism, which are 2 entirely different things. And we can't do journalism unless reporting makes money, right? And so this is always going to be a tension. So we have to be careful, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm actually asking your opinion. We have to be careful about chasing the wind commercially and losing our raison d'etre, what we're here for.
Yeah. And I think you sort of, I think of it at the moment a bit like push and pull kind of models. So the original journalism, it's funny, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who'd said, we were talking about someone who used to work with at the Sunday Times, and the third person in the conversation said, the newspapers are much less powerful than they were. They were talking about politics, much less powerful in terms of shaping politics. And I said, well, I definitely, I mean, yes, they are. Yes, they are, because there's much more competition for media, than there's ever been, right? So I'm not arguing that that isn't the case. What I would say is that the job that the newspapers do in story origination and actually going and getting scoops and, building a narrative that turns into the discussion that all of the other competitive media sources then feed off is underrated. And so the influence that newsrooms have in the world. It's still very high, and it's higher at this point than they have in distribution and monetization. But so that's the difference to me between a push model, which is we've decided this is important. We're going to go and get that story. We've invented a cultural trend. We've thought of profiling a sports person that no one's talking about. We've got an angle on reporting that no one's asked us for. That's going to end up being your owned and operated kind of. That's what builds your brand and your reputation. The pull side, which is consumers are searching for something where you're meant to be an expert in this area. People are asking, why is what is the political view of Nigel Farage on whatever? You're gonna answer that query, and so I think you're going to end up, if you think of this as almost two separate product markets, one being your owned and operated masthead led subscription bundle or kind of mass free to air kind of site. It is where you're mostly in the sort of push me pull you world, a little bit of push, but also some just reacting to what's happening in the day. The content marketplace is much more. There's a market which is immediate. People have not thought of this before. There's also this huge evergreen market. People searching for when was Ricky Sutton at the news of the world, or
careful.
Who won the Ryder Cup? Where was the Ryder Cup in 1987? All of that stuff is as you say, it's not, the newsroom is not running around rewriting stories on where was the Ryder Cup in 1987, but somebody has to have the answer to that question in a kind of world.
So I've got three responses to that. So the first one is this. This is the whole point of air gap. So if the stuff you're doing is reporting, okay, which is commoditized, everyone's doing it, there's a million versions of that story. This might be the Washington Post's version, but it's still the story that everyone else has done. You have to take a view that is not terribly exciting and not terribly valuable because, you're a widget in a factory and that's okay. That doesn't go in air gap. That just goes out to the open web because you ultimately want to service people. You want to inform people. You want to be relevant. That's your Walmart web. I'm going to go down there into the Walmart web where it's stack it high, sell it cheap, might not get anything actually. But you know what? I'm just going to stick it down there so my brand has validity. So that's one thing. But the journalism, the interview, the exclusive profile of the new Liverpool striker, that kind of stuff. That goes into air gap and that has a price and that's highly valuable. But there's one third one that popped up. So I don't know if you saw that I wrote an article this week about a innovation at the Washington Post called Ask the Post.
Yep.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
So Ask the Post. So basically what the Washington Post has done is it's taken its archives going back to the mid-90s and it's used them to train an AI. And then you can have a chat with that AI on the Washington Post, okay, both on its app and on its website. So I was interested this week in America, yet again, trying to bite its foot off, going into a collapse financially and going into a shutdown. And I wanted to understand how bad the debt in America was. Now, I could go and type that in ChatGPT and I might get 99%, 96% true, right? Great.
Yep.
But what I actually wanted to do was I really wanted to find out if it was really true. And if I go and do a Google search, I don't get the response I want. Does it give me the information I want? So where do I go? So do you know what I did? I went to Ask the Post. And I said to the Washington Post, hey, tell me about the shutdown and tell me about how bad is America's debt relative to its GDP. And how bad is that relative to the rest of the world? Now, I appreciate not everyone's going to ask that question. That's kind of the nerdy kind of question that I'd ask because I love the numbers. But you know what it did? It came back and it said, here's an article that we wrote 5 months ago that shows you 5 or 10 charts that tells you why America's going to go into a shutdown in 6 months' time. And what happened was an AI surfaced my question and gave me an answer, but it had nothing to do with big tech. Nothing to do with big tech. It happened within the Washington Post. And so I just quickly want to say and give a shout out to the CTO of the Washington Post. So many of you won't know this, but I will reveal something to you because he rang me last night after I wrote my article. And he said, I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you so
Mm.
much. Amazing. I was like, terrific. And I thought, I know that guy's name. I know his name. I know his name. He's the fucking founder of Siri. So before Siri was part of Apple,
Yeah.
he built Siri, right? And then Apple bought Siri. And then he went to Apple for 8 years, 9 years to build it. But then Siri kind of hit a wall. It's kind of stopped. And so
Mm.
he's left. And where's he gone? He's gone to the Washington Post to create a Siri in the Washington Post.
Yeah.
I'd pay for that every day of the week. Every single day of the week. And if I could get all of the publishers to create a Siri for premium publishers, I'd pay a lot for that. And so how do you make that happen? Well, it's air gap, isn't it? Or it's Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I think that this is what this is about. I think that eventually what you're going to do is you're going to have a premium account with 365 that gives you access to all of its products, and you're working in a spreadsheet, and only Excel can do the numbers for you based on the latest data in 5 seconds ago from the Wall Street Journal. I think that's the play.
And I think that's a great outcome for publishers. It's a great outcome for publishers because it creates value. Now, I think what the Washington Post. I mean, I think we're going to follow up on that, but I think the Washington Post has done is very smart because it basically says, well, actually, we're not as publishers. I think sometimes we get painted into this corner, which is you're just trying to resist technology and the inevitable advance and progress that technology brings. It's not true.
Does that make you mad when they say that?
It does.
Do you get angry when they say that?
Yeah, it does. Particularly because it's normally the people that are saying it are normally people that I think are ignoring the kind of norms of consumer law and passing that off as kind of modernism, which makes me pretty antsy.
Frankly,
yeah.
Yeah. Did I trigger you? That's 2 in 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's condescending and it's bullshit. And what this sort of says is this is how you could deploy, the technology, which is separate from the consumer products of AI, the actual technology of a kind of a chatbot trained on a fixed domain. That's with tone, with the thing that they've done quite well is it then also serves you up the next set of content based on what you've looked for, and it affects your kind of Washington Post experience. So I think that is a good example of a kind of a publisher using the technology within the bounds of their product. I think this kind of Microsoft Marketplace or Cloudflare Marketplace is then ultimately going to create. If you think about that, I hadn't actually thought about this. You said it, but if I had the ability, so I'm like just sat here in my sort of front room, and I think today, do you know what? I'd love to build a product where I had all the premium publishers in one place. And I could surface articles based on, reporting from some of the greatest mastheads in history. And so I would go to the publishing associations and I would say, hey guys, why don't we all work together on a commercial product? And 6 years later, I would come out beaten, 50 years older, because trying to get collaboration within the publishing industry has always been very difficult. You create a marketplace, all kinds of product innovation can happen because people can say, well, what about if I bundled these things together and charged that for it? What about if I created a product that kind of surfaced these things in this way and did that with it? And that's very exciting for publishers to think about being a kind of a component in other people's product innovation, but recognized and valued as a component. That isn't happening right now. I'm pretty excited about that.
That's what we should talk about in Madrid. But I think that my worry is, and I said this, I can't remember who I said to, but a couple of times this week, is that my worry is that we follow, as an industry, we follow too easily the tech guys lead. They say to you, the future is going to be like this. And everybody follows along like, it's like, who was the guy with the flute from the Rats? Who was that? Plays the flute.
The Pied Piper.
Anyway, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And we
I
all
nearly said
just
Peter
follow
Pan then.
along.
It definitely wasn't Peter Pan.
I didn't say Peter Pan.
No, I
No
nearly did.
point. He paid a pipe. And but that's what we've done for years, and that hasn't
Mm,
worked one day in the last 25 years, right? And so the tech is easier to build than the tech and the media companies think it is, right? Thank you, Alistair.
yeah.
That's why we need you, man. You're a
Yeah.
genius. Thank you. Right. And so it is far more than that. We can do it ourselves. We need to rebuild the faith that we can be creative and do this well. Now, the irony is that the best people in media that know how to do this broadly and usually aren't in media right now because they've left to go and do other
Mm,
things, to be have the opportunities to be innovative and entrepreneurial and break some eggs and take some risks. And it's very difficult to do any of those things when you're in a media company where you've got massive challenges that sit on you and you've got to report in 30 days, right?
mm,
And what we need to do is to take this as a transitional point to say, hey, thank you so much, all of you, for going out to go and do the hard yards on our behalf.
mm.
Please come on back because do you know what? We're getting back in the fight. And
Yeah.
the time is now. AI isn't a threat to us. It's a turning of a page.
Yeah.
And if we think that AI is a way to do more with less and to get rid of staff and be more efficient, all we're doing is shrinking ourselves to zero. Okay. Anybody that works in AI will tell you a singularity looks exactly like that. Don't do that. The
Yeah.
opportunity here is to say that this is an accelerant for growth. And we are essential for that growth. And we need to not be afraid of the technology and we need to adopt it, inherit it, and turbocharge it and not be ashamed of what we do for a living
Yeah.
and build it.
Well, and compete because there's obviously that marketplace sits kind of at a point in the landscape. After that, there's browsers. There's going to be browsers. They've just integrated Gemini into Chrome. Obviously, there's going to be the Comet browser. There's a whole bunch of publishers who signed up for that. You're going to see kind of different.
They're followers, man. They're followers. We don't need to be a fast follower. We're allowed to lead.
Yeah, no, all I'm saying is this to me would then set that up correctly, which is there's an input version, and then there's a what's the consumer product challenge. And I think what the reason I like that Washington Post thing so much is that's saying, well, hang on a minute, I don't have to be just a traditional digital news site, and the whole world of chatbots and AI sits in someone else's product. That's just a technology. I can integrate that and it can be part of my product under my brand. That I think is that's really encouraging. Yeah, it's a good thing. And actually, we sort of joke. I think people say, oh, the technology is the easy bit. The other thing about Microsoft doing it is I'm a lot happier with Microsoft doing it than some other. Can you imagine? Who else? Who else can I think of? Meta would be one. There are other companies, that I just think I would be looking at that in a slightly different way. For interest, where does that leave in the kind of if you go around that table of Trump's tech dinner? So Satya Nadella's sat at that table, kind of tucking into his whatever they had, steak and chips, and saying, "Yeah, we're thinking of building this." How does that work if you're a Google or a Meta or a Perplexity or a Anthropic? Are you kind of sat there, do you think, going, oh, thank God that's a problem I don't have to solve? Are you looking at that saying that creates a problem for me because it accepts this value and pricing?
The latter. Yeah. This is a real problem. And one of the things I absolutely love about the way that Satya Nadella does business is that he sits quietly and he waits and he thinks about it. And then he just drops an absolute stinking turd on your doorstep. Because it's just great business, isn't it? Do you know what? I can see how this helps us, but I know that actually it might add 20% to us, but it consistently delivers 20% of badness to all my friends So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
actually 120% ahead.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's basically what it does. It basically says, hey, look, this whole copyright argument doesn't matter. Like,
Mm,
it's not true. This fair use thing it doesn't count.
yeah,
That's what he's done.
yeah.
And that's brilliant because it kneecaps his competitors and says to him, my door is open. He's done this about 4 or 5 times and he's done it really, really well. Do you know why I think it comes from him? Because they've already been antitrusted. And
Yeah,
so
maybe.
they
Yeah.
have, so their chairman, okay,
Mm,
I'm going to remind people, I haven't mentioned this for a while, it's one of my favorite stories. So their chairman, okay, Brad Smith, was hired as a lawyer to deal with their attack to be antitrusted 25 years ago. So exactly what Google's going through now. And when he
mm,
arrived, Bill Gates and everybody else that was running Microsoft were just like, these people are stupid. The government don't understand what we do. The public love us. We're more powerful than God. We can do anything the hell we want. And I don't care about these antitrust laws. Just don't give a toss. It's absolutely fine. And Brad Smith sits down with them and goes, you're going to lose. And what you need to
yeah.
do is to start to think about what the world looks like on the other side of losing. And so let's say, just for the sake of argument, I'm right. Of all the time and all the money and all the power you've got, do you not at least want to prepare for just the tiniest possibility you lose? Because then you'll know what to do. And that's what he did. He persuaded them
Mm,
to prepare and he taught them to be a little bit more modest. And I actually spoke to him
mm,
and he issued his 6 stages of antitrust grief. And I'm going to share it now because I think this is why Microsoft's doing what it's doing. You have wisdom with age and experience. So the 6 stages were number one, this is what companies that are being antitrusted think. Number one, the government just doesn't understand tech. Ignore them.
yeah.
These are
You've got this written on your
points.
wall. Yeah.
It is, it's on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, the government doesn't appreciate all the good stuff we do while we're a horrible monopolist and
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
all the money and killing everybody, right? They just don't appreciate the good work that we do. Number three, oh, it's fine. I know they're suing us, but we'll win in court. Have you seen our lawyers? We got all the
Yeah.
money in the world. Number three. Number four, this isn't going as well as I hoped. Maybe we just settle and we won't, and nothing painful will happen to us.
Yeah.
We'll just settle. Throw money at it, it'll go away. All right, great. Number five. Oh, shit. This isn't looking good. I think this is actually going to hurt quite a lot. Okay. Number six. Fuck, we lost.
Ouch.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
There's actually life after this. We're not dead.
Yeah.
We're just changed. Okay. And our landscape has changed. And maybe we need a different CEO and maybe we need a different kind of thinking. But we're not out of business. We're still an incredible business. But now what we've got is a whole new horizon to aim for. And what I love most is Brad's advice. Okay. And he gave this to Google. It is get to fucking 6 as fast as you can.
As quick
in
as
your
you
head.
can. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why Microsoft's been the first to smell the coffee here. I think it
Yeah.
knows how shit it was last time. It doesn't want to go through that again. And at the pace, if OpenAI, I've got another chart over there.
Mm,
If OpenAI is now $750 billion, okay, it'll be $3 billion in a year from now.
mm,
Might be more, could be 5. And it will be a massive, hopeless, screaming, neon monopoly.
yeah.
Okay. And the world has changed. And so I think people are just trying to say, let's try and just accept the reality that maybe we don't want to live in Blade Runner, right? We don't want to live in a world where there's only one corporate entity.
Yeah.
Governments are going to push back on that. And I think Microsoft is smart enough to know
Yeah.
and behave right.
They're smart enough to know that you cannot see a world in which OpenAI's valuation and turnover and capital investment keeps growing at the rate that it is while publishers one by one, the content that underpins it pops and pops and pops as publishers disappear because they're
How good?
disincentivized to invest. So I think
100%.
this is in the same way, like you know, people are coming and doing deals to get nuclear power, right? They're doing deals to buy cities up to put data centers in. They're doing deals to make sure they have water, right? This to me is the equivalent of we're going to build a nuclear power station because we're going to need to make sure we've got guaranteed energy to run these AI systems into the future. And you know, we are the kind of the fuel of that. And so this is a kind of a smart thing to do.
How good do you think it is for the world if you build a nuclear power station purely to power a Belarus bot farm to drive you to buy a six-pack for 80-year-old men?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is the absolute madness that we live in, right? You know,
Yeah.
the whole open web as a logic has just kind of fallen flat on its face, hasn't it? Look, I'm actually twice as optimistic today as I was 2 months ago.
Yep.
Because marketplaces are emerging, common sense is emerging. A model for the monetization of premium content is emerging. I think the gold rush on AI is perhaps beginning to reach its maturity. And it doesn't actually surprise me, to be honest, that Microsoft is the one that goes. There's a problem here. I think I know where this goes.
Let's do that properly.
This time round, let's
do
it properly, right?
Listen,
Look,
what a beautiful place to end.
Man, I could talk about this forever and a day. Thank you so much for jumping on. I've really enjoyed it. And we'll be back again. Oh, assuming you're committing to be back next week, are you not?
Yes, I'm back next week. Yeah, back next week for more of the same.
Easy peasy. Let's do it at the same time next week. I don't know what will have happened by then. Anybody want to make a guess? But we will definitely be here to take you through it. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Great stuff. Thanks, folks. See ya.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.